There's something you don't know about sex. You and anyone actually can have an orgasm without being touched, without contact. Not only that, you can have them in unlimited numbers, and that a lot of people that have this experience describe it as being better than conventional sex. And what's really weird is this can be achieved by simple relaxation. I think the catch is it's a particular kind of very deep relaxation that brings this about. So I'm going to really try to explain this and lay it out for you because I think it has more implications, but I'll tell you first how I came to know about this. So I should explain that I was not a hypnotist exactly by choice. I have been a journalist for most of my life. And back during 9/11, I was working on a documentary about, actually had to do with the way people died. It was not a fun film. I actually got traumatized by a number of the images that appeared in this documentary. I knew this because I literally could not get the pictures out of my head. And so what I did is, for months I lost sleep. I developed a kind of anxiety I'd never had before. And sort of as a last-ditch thing, I saw an ad for somebody offering help for people that had obsessive memories. I called the number, and within half an hour, I was talked through a particular process. The problem was resolved. I was instantly cured. I then discovered that it was hypnosis. And I was trained in hypnosis. I learned how to do it after that, and I thought, I gotta learn how to do this. And I got quite into it. I did a TEDx talk that has gone around, and I did something called the Hypnotic Bar, where I believe that you can use hypnosis to put people on any drug or any alcohol state without there actually being drugs or alcohol in their system. When I was studying hypnosis, I would often go and study shows that people did, and there's a phenomenon in late night, kind of like Las Vegas hypnosis shows, where you go to a show and at the end, sort of the closing crazy act, the hypnotist will announce that everyone on stage right now will have a massive orgasm. To give you an idea, this is what it looks like. And so, of course, I started to ask the question, and I think I'm hoping I'm not the only one who would be curious about this. I wanted to know if this is real, okay? So I teamed up with another hypnotist, Dominique LaRoche. She's from Montreal. Unfortunately, she could not be here. She's somewhere halfway across the Atlantic Ocean right now. But we sort of launched a project to try to figure out what the hell is going on with this. We got a bunch of volunteers. We hypnotized them, or we hypnotized them in a sort of workshop setting. And we found out that, first of all, there is no limitation in gender. Men could experience this as well as women. This is a real thing. It can be done outside in natural settings. Sexual orientation was not a factor. It can be done in groups. This is a group of people in Paris simultaneously experiencing hypnotic orgasms. This is a public setting, actually in Montreal, on the stage, people experiencing it. In Estonia, in a laboratory setting. And even in couples. In this case, both people here are in trance and they're having the experience together. It is even possible, and we demonstrated this too, that you can laugh your way to hypnotic orgasm, and we called it the laughgasm. To explain a little bit of how this was done, because you're probably wondering, how do you do this kind of thing? There was a group we got together called the Montreal Experimental Trance Group, and it was kind of like a group workshop where we would experiment to see what was possible in a sort of consensual, gentle, and safe way. Then I came across this woman named Karolin Tsarski from Estonia, who seemed to be going on a parallel research plan. She was trying to figure out, she herself had come through a kind of healing trajectory of being sort of essentially non-orgasmic in her life, and had made herself orgasmic through training herself. And it was something similar. So we did a test where we put her in trance, and we found that she was amazing, and I actually think anyone can do this, but she was very good. And we found that she could have 40 different kinds of orgasms, basically in the space of half an hour. And I'm just going to show you the examples. So this is like her relaxed orgasm. This is her divine orgasm. We would sort of make the suggestion, and she would do it. This is the loving orgasm, the gentle orgasm, powerful, vulnerable, unrestrained. At one point, we worried. The neighbors called the police because she was screaming so loud. Wild, and the ecstatic. To try to answer the question of like how this happened or how this works. Here, the clue is right here. If you look closer, their eyes appear to be rolled up in their head, right? Now, we call this in hypnosis the somnambulant trance. It's a deep, deep trance. And a lot of people look at this and go, ooh, oh, that's strange and weird. And I'm like, don't judge. You do that every night when you dream. We all do this. Just that what people that can go into deep trance can do is they can do it, in the company of other people. So she's in a deep somnambulant trance. That's sort of the first clue of what's going on here. So how does it work? Well, sort of a different way of looking at sexuality. I think the way we have been trained or socialized to think about sex, especially probably men more than women, is that sex is something you energize or you agitate up to. People work themselves up to it. And it's like a kind of like a high pressure experience. What this is the exact opposite. It is deep and profound relaxation, and what the somnambulant trance does is it drops people very dramatically into a profoundly calm and maybe relaxed and safe, hopefully safe state. And the orgasm seems to happen almost naturally, meaning it doesn't even have to be, in some cases, suggested. It's not even necessarily a sexual experience, which is intriguing. One thing, obviously, with this conference, I was trying to think, what is the sort of natural corollary? Like, where does this come from in nature? And of course, and it took me a while to figure out, it's sort of like hiding in plain sight. It's actually a natural blooming state, I think. This is totally conjecture on my part. But I think it's the way, and if you look at this, you'll sort of see it, that there's kind of a bloom that happens. And we would see this when people would have the experience. It was much like time-lapse photography of flowers blooming. And of course, it's very beautiful. Now, one thing that's interesting too is that we, in the course of this project, we went to different sex conferences. We tried to understand, to try to figure out what was going on. And every scientist and neuroscientist that we talked to said, this is off the radar of the sexual research community. They have no idea that this even exists. And the proof of it is, this would be a really easy way to research sexuality. Because it's apparently very hard. If you want to do research on orgasms, it's very complicated because you've got to get people to come into your laboratory and have orgasms in predictable ways, which is actually very hard. So this kind of actually solves a problem, but it's also weirdly proof that the scientific community basically does not even know it exists. There is research out of Northwestern University that suggested that actually sexuality is a trance. Trance is a transformational state, often by definition, especially within hypnosis. Why does this matter? There's currently, in society, we consider there to be a tremendous sexual malaise. Apparently, allegedly, I don't think this is really true, that millennials are barely having sex at all. I feel bad for them. And what was funny is when I was looking this up, I looked up like on stock images shots of like couples that were having sexual problems, and there's like a gazillion of them. I mean, there's so many like stock images just full of couples not having sex, or really unhappy about their not having sex. So some of the applications of this sort of endeavor might be that you can change bad patterns. Obviously, you can rekindle intimacy. It might help with sexual expression in the case of disability, and increase the diversity of experience. And I mentioned before, it could be used for research. I thought this was intriguing in terms of the broader picture of what we're talking about at this conference, which is that there's a lot of research showing that there's a connection between sexual frustration in a culture and general violence in the culture. This is kind of obvious, but if more people were sort of sexually satisfied or happy or had reasonable sex lives, maybe they wouldn't be such big jerks. So this is kind of intriguing. The other very, very clear application of is that I didn't know this until I started this, is that 10% of women are anorgasmic, which means they've never experienced orgasm. Never. And I think a smaller percentage of men. Now, I'm going to show you something interesting. So we brought in a woman who was anorgasmic, who's never had an orgasm. And I'm going to show you a video where, in a standard way, she goes through the experience. So here's a video. This actually happened in Montreal, of a woman sort of going into trance and having the experience. Now, I'll say one thing too. People that maybe don't follow hypnosis are always sort of leery of like the finger snapping. They're like,
they sort of see it as, people often see it as like authoritarian behavior, like you will do what I tell you to do, or something like that. I should just explain that's not really generally what it is. The way that trance behaviors work is that if you surprise somebody by snapping your fingers, the surprise kind of opens them up to the next suggestion. So the snap is more surprise, and it's what comes after that is interesting. So you're not necessarily ordering somebody to do something, just so you know. Okay, so take a look at this video. This happened here in Montreal.
For me, this thing between my legs is broken. It doesn't work. I've had so much trouble in bed. I already have 2 kids, and I didn't take the time to enjoy the experience. I'm used to repressing a lot. I've been unhappy for many, many years.
Together, why don't we take a deep breath in? Let's take a deep breath in towards the ceiling. Hold the breath for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then just let the breath drop. Good. Second deep breath in. Hold it for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you let the muscles in your forehead just let go. Just let them let go. And because you requested the ability just to see if you can come back out, on your own volition, you're just going to come right back out. 1. Good. And now on the count of 3, 2, 1, deeper, relax, deeper and deeper each time. On the count of 3, 2, 1, sleep. 3, 2, even deeper. In this very relaxed state, let us have an opportunity to express our appreciation for you. You are incredibly beautiful. You are incredibly rare. You are incredibly wonderful. Now, 10 times as good. Now, 100 times as good. Now, melt. Just melt into it. Melt. Coming back into the room on the count of 10, 9, gradually surfacing, 8, moving back to alertness, 2, 1. When I snap my fingers, you can open your eyes. Now.
Well done.
How do you feel now?
I feel so powerful. I feel like I own myself.
And it's how beautiful you are right now. You're so.
I feel like I'm. Yeah, I feel. Yeah.
Glowing.
You look powerful and smiling.
Your eyes are so different right now.
Anyway, some of the reported effects that people who have had this experience before is they report in their relationships deep in intimacy, diversification of their sex lives, weight loss. And what's funny is that this is sort of a crazy idea, but imagine if you went somewhere and you went into trance and you had like 15 orgasms, and then you just like woke up and went, back to work or something like that. As a weight loss program, you could do like twice a week. I can tell you that it's absolutely possible. Absolutely possible. Another thing that people report is their complexions change in kind of dramatic ways. Here's an example, exactly. And then, of course, you have the other attributes. You tend to have way more orgasms as well. So there is a catch here, but I don't think it's that serious. The catch is you can only do this virtually in a somnambulant trance. It has to be a deep trance. And right now, maybe about 30% of the population can do this spontaneously. I think everyone can do it probably with training, but 30% of, I would say 30% of people here could do this in 2 minutes. I want to also say that I don't want to make it sound like hypnosis is the only way. You can probably get similar results or some results with Tantra, wet yoga. There's something called the hands-free orgasm. But hypnosis is a way that you can predictably do it. You can do it fairly exactly. If the person goes into the trance, they're open to the experience, they will have the experience. There is some concern, of course, naturally about safety and ethics. And one thing that's, I think there's something to be figured out there for sure. But one of the things that's interesting about it is that trance kind of works in the way that you only go as deep as you trust, meaning I can't do this to people without them wanting to do it, without them asking to do it. Really, I can try right now. I said, okay, you're going to have an orgasm now. Okay, works on him. No, but generally it does not work at all. So the person has to want it, they have to ask for it, they have to agree to the entire process, consent to the whole thing, and then it can happen. So it's a very sort of gentle and careful process, I think. So now you might be asking, after all this, is it real? So what's very interesting is that Karolin Tsarski, who's done some of her own research, was involved with this project with us, actually had a series of blood tests done. She went to a laboratory in Estonia, went into essentially what was similar to a hypnotic orgasm, and then was blood tested before and after. And what they found out very clearly in the study was that there's the presence of a hormone that could only happen when you actually have an orgasm. And so when they tested for the presence of that hormone, it was there. It's totally real. And I think maybe I would close with this idea that we live in a society where we don't really know how we get the sexuality that we get. It's sort of like being dealt a set of cards. Now, I'm not talking about sexual orientation. I'm just sort of talking about tastes, what works for us, what doesn't, what makes us desire. And what's interesting about this is that it gives you kind of the possibility of some control. That this is some way that you can actually sort of take your sexuality back and possibly have some choice, and actually have a kind of sexual rebirth, which is kind of beautiful and maybe a little bit wild. Thank you very much.